welcome to my very first course here on Skillshare. In this course, we are going to talk about the basics of graphic design. We are also going to talk about what graphic design and design is. We are going to talk about good practices of design, color, shape, contrast, hierarchy, balancing, and after everything, I'm going to send you an exercise so you can put in practice everything that you learn with me. Before we get started, I will tell you why it's so important to you to learn the basics before you actually start designing. It's very, very important to know it, and I will teach you in the next video. My name is Lucas, and thank you for taking my first course here on Skillshare. In this video, we are going to talk about why is it so important to you to learn the basics of graphic design before you actually start designing. I started designing when I was 14 years old. I was not a designer, but it was when I got my first graphic design job. I was not a graphic designer at the time, but I took a job of graphic design. What I mean by this, I knew how to use the software because I spent lots of time on YouTube watching tutorials on how to use Illustrator, CorelDRAW, and Photoshop. After some time, 3 to 4 months, to be capable of producing some pieces of graphic design that my parents need for their company. That was my first graphic design job, by the way. I went there and I searched on how to use the software, and I think, I'm an artist, so I can do everything that a graphic designer can do. And I was actually wrong. And it took me many years to understand that, because I had no one to teach me how graphic design actually works. And I stayed like this for my first 5 years of graphic design. And I still was a very bad designer because I knew how to use the software, but something was missing. I felt like I knew all the letters of an alphabet, I knew all the syllables, but I didn't know how to talk and how to write. I tried very hard to make all my designs very good as I thought I could do, but it's still everything that I made were not good at all. As you know, done is better than perfect. And after these 5 years of experience in software, that's how I call it, software experience, not graphic design experience, I went to a course in Lisbon about game design. It was not graphic design, and it was then that I finally understood why is it so important to know the basics. In this course, the main thing that we learned was about games, but I understood that the basics of design is the same on all areas of design. Of course, they have some differences between each area of design, but I finally understood the basics of design in general. It was by then that I decided that I wanted to go to a university to actually learn graphic design. So I took 3 years of graphic design. And in my first year of college, I finally learned what was wrong with my designs, and I finally understood what I was doing wrong. It doesn't matter what software you use. Once you know the basics, once you know how to use and how to communicate, you could use any software, even Paintbrush if you want. You can even not use a computer at all. In my first year of college, all my teachers forbidden me, and the other students of course, to use computers on their classes. Everything was made by hand with paper cut, drawing, and this made us understand how everything was made and how we should do everything, because they focused on the important part. Using the computer is like knowing to write. Knowing how to write doesn't make you a writer, and knowing how to use Illustrator or Photoshop doesn't make you a graphic designer. My first year of college was all about creativity and communication, learning how to plug communication to the creativity part. And then I learned one of the most important things that any graphic designer will tell you. Graphic design is not art. In our next class, we are going to talk about what design and graphic design is. In this class, we are going to talk about what design and graphic design is. One of the most common mistakes that everyone does when they're trying to understand what is design is to think that design and art are the same thing, or graphic design is a form of art, but it is not, definitely not. Art is much more of a relative thing. It's the way that an artist expresses their feelings, their emotions. It's a way to express thoughts, and it is relative. That's the first and main difference between design and art. One of the most common mistakes that people do about what is design, they think that graphic design is to take everything and make it look good, look beautiful, but it's much more than this. Graphic design is problem solving, is communicating, is identifying it's much more of a visual communication. It's all about sending a message and being understood. The audience, the people that are seeing your design, must understand the same thing that you wanted them to understand. While in art, it's very different. The vision that I have of one piece of art may be completely different from the vision that you have. You may like it and I may not like it, and vice versa. If a piece of graphic design is relative, it's not objective, it's because it's a bad design. It's not a matter of if you like it or not, it's if you understand it or not. Design is objective. In design, form follows function. In arts, it's the exact opposite. You first think of the aesthetic part and then you think about the function part. And in most cases, it doesn't even have a function. So this is the main difference. Art is not problem solving. Art is relative, design is objective. And I can prove that design is not art because many times we will have to communicate things that looks bad. So yeah, graphic design can be bad looking and still being good design. But when we are talking about art, if everyone that looks at it thinks it looks bad, it's probably bad art because they're not appreciating the aesthetics part of art that is actually everything. One of the things that makes this confusion very common between people is because graphic design and art uses the same tools. You can use draw in both, take photographs, you can make illustrations, you can make most of the tools used in arts are used in graphic design too. Bad art are the art that no one likes to consume, no one likes to look at, no one likes to hear. And bad design is when your audience doesn't understand what you are talking about or doesn't receive the right message. Because if you don't communicate properly, you are not solving the problems of your clients. And this is the most important part of graphic design. Now that you already know what design is, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating the word design a lot, it is because we are talking about what it is, and I will repeat this name many times throughout this course. In the next class, we are going to talk about good practices of graphic design. In this class, we are going to talk about the good practices of graphic design. One of the most important parts of graphic design, not only graphic design, but actually any part of design, is to do a proper research. You have to know what the competition of your clients are doing. You have to know how they communicate so you can understand the language of the market and then you communicate with them. You can use tools like Google Images. Have you ever heard about it? You can use Pinterest, even go to the street, go to stores and look to what the competition of your client is doing. And yes, you have to find inspiration. You have to know what you are doing. You are not creating things from zero, from scratch, from your head. If you just sit on your computer and you start drawing stuff and you start designing from nothing, you are probably going to have one of these two stuff. You are either going to have a bad design because you don't understand anything about the competition in the area that you are working with, or you are just going to create this amazing piece of graphic design that doesn't fit this client and this job. So make sure that you do the proper research before you actually start designing. After you're doing all the research that you needed, you are going to create your mood board. A mood board is basically an artboard filled with all the reference and inspirational work that you could find in your research phase. You can use any software you want to create it. You can use Illustrator, Photoshop, or any other you like to use. You can even don't use software at all. You can print all the reference and all the inspirational work and stick it to a paper where you're going to look whenever you need inspiration. The mood board is so important because it's the first creative step on your work, and it also will guide you throughout all the process. It's going to give you the guidelines, it's going to point you to the right direction where you should go with all your design work. And after you're completing the mood board, you will create something that's called Stylescape. Stylescape is a level up from your mood board. You are going to take every single element that you have on your mood board and you are going to work with it. You're going to cut it, you're going to make a color selection, you're going to start searching for type for your project, typefaces, type family, and you are going to create a stylescape that's going to be the rule for your project. Is going to be it's going to be the compass for your project. One of the best practices is involving your client in your projects, but not too much. And what I mean here is, okay, you are going to include your client on the job, but they're not going to be sitting on your side and telling you everything that you should do, because you are the one who are supposed to know what must be done. And if the client knows more than you, why they are hiring you? Let them do it themselves. And how do you include the client on the job? You are not going to create only one stylescape. You are going to create 4 or maybe 5 stylescapes that are completely different from each other. They will have different typefaces, colors, shapes, communication, everything. Just make several directions to the work and present all of them to your client. You'll present 4 to 5 different stylescapes so they can pick one, and you make sure that you keep it clear about the stylescape being the thing that's going to guide you in your work. It's going to be the Bible of your work, so they must choose the right one. Okay, but how do I do a stylescape if I don't know anything about design yet? So now that you know what you have to do, I will explain you how to do it, okay? The exercise of this course is going to be a stylescape. We are going to create a stylescape for a fictitious brand that are going to create on the end of this course. And to create this stylescape, we are going to talk about the basics of graphic design from now. In the next video, we are going to talk the very basics of color in graphic design. Welcome to the class where we are going to talk about color in graphic design. I choose to talk about color before talking about all other concepts of graphic design because it's the most clear and direct aspect of visual communication. Our brains tend to understand color before understanding anything that we see. It understands color before shape, before volume. There are 2 main things that makes you understand an object and everything that you see. There are color and shape. But the first thing that you are going to see is always the color. When you see something that you are not clear about what you saw, you are probably going to remember its color, but you're not going to remember its shape. You may argue with me saying that the first thing that you see is light, but you can actually see light. You see the reflection of light that reflects color and shape to our eyes. So the first thing that you actually can definitely see is color and then the shape. The concepts about color that I'm going to teach you in this course are the very basics. Later on I will create a full course just on color. Okay, here comes the hard part. Forget everything that you knew about color theory because you are probably wrong. I'm not saying that you are, but you were probably wrong. There are 2 different systems of color in the world. There are subtractive colors and additive colors. Subtractive are all the systems that mixing all the colors, all the primary colors, are going to generate a black color. And the additive is the opposite. Mixing the 3 primary colors are going to generate you white. So basically, additive system is related to light, the color of the light. And subtractive system is the system of ink. And their primary colors are different too. The primary colors of the additive system are the secondary colors on the subtractive system, and the primary colors on the subtractive system are the secondary colors on the additive system. There are many different color models to represent each one of these 2 systems. And I'm going to talk about the main models in each system. The color of light is the one that most of you probably know correctly how does it work. Their 3 primary colors are R, G, and B, red, green, and blue. So this color model is known as RGB color model. And combining them with different values can create all other colors that we know. An RGB system is the closest one to how we see the real world. We see reflection of light to our eyes. So the light bounces in an object to our eyes and we receive the information of this color. This color model is most used in screens, like computer screens, televisions, cell phones, and it tries to emulate how light and color works in real life. Now, the subtractive color models are the one that most of you doesn't know properly because for some strange reason all the school systems teaches the subtractive colors wrong, because you may think that the primary colors are red, yellow, and blue of ink, but they are not. And every child that starts drawing and painting in arts class are taught that these are the three main colors, the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. But it's not accurate at all, because you can't create these three colors with this system. It's impossible. The right subtractive color system is CMY, cyan, magenta, and yellow. Yellow is the only correct color in the RYB model. And by mixing these three colors of ink, you can create almost every color you can see in the world. You may be thinking about, okay, I know CMYK, but where did the K go? Okay, in theory, you could create every single color in the world with CMY, but due to some technical issues with the printers and with the machines that produce color, and also because of the ink absorption of the paper, it is impossible to get rich and real black only with these three colors. And that's why in the CMYK system, black was added, just to make the black really black. And for some reason, even the key color on the CMYK system is not really black, but this is a subject to talk about in the color course. In RGB color model, each primary color has a value from 0 to 255. In CMYK, it goes from 0 to 100, but there are 4 primary colors. Every time that you start a new project, you have to know if you are going to do the project in paper to be printed, or you're going to do a project just to screens or digital work for some reason, some video games, some Facebook pages, Instagram pages, I don't know, but you have to know if the project is going to be printed or is going just to be displayed on screens. Because depending on this, you're going to pick either RGB or CMYK system. For screens, RGB, for printing, and for ink, CMYK system. So now that you already know the basics of color theory, you must choose the colors that you are going to use to your projects. But before you start choosing colors, don't just choose color because you like it, choose it because it makes sense. Because every color has a psychological effect. For example, blue is a sad color, orange is a happy color, red is a color of love. But in design, you have to know what each color means. So make sure that you do the correct research before start picking colors and start using colors on your designs. And this is it for this class. In the next class, we are going to talk about shape. See ya. In this class, we are going to talk about shape. Shape is one of the most important things in graphic design too, in visual communication. One of the most important things to understand is that shapes also has meaning. If you are using many pointy stuff, pointing typography to pointing images, you are going to be telling something. But if instead of it you use something more floaty, more round, you're going to be speaking something completely different. You have to know when to use pointy shapes and when to use rounded stuff, because you don't want to make a poster for a child party with lots of spikes and pointy stuff, because everything that surrounds child mostly are with rounded shapes, for example, not because of childs themselves, but because of the parents. Rounded shapes tends to have more of a safe value. It's more comfortable, it's not dangerous. If we use something more pointy, more spiky, you may be communicating something very not safe for a child, because pointy things may cut you, may hurt you, and what parents want the child the most is their safety. So most of the things for childs are going to be rounded, mainly if you are talking about babies. But if you are doing a poster for a hard rock band, you are not going to make very floaty and roundy things. You are going to make sharp things, you are going to make pointy things, because this is what they sound like. Their sound is more pointy, more radical, more aggressive. It's not a safe sound. You know, there are two very extreme situations, but take this in consideration. Shapes are one of the most important things in any graphic design piece. And there is one more thing that you must understand about shapes, is that they also bring sounds with them. Depending on the language that you speak, if you speak English, if you speak Portuguese like me, if you speak Spanish, each shape may be linked to a different sound. If you speak English, the sound of the letter T, for example, usually is associated with a pointy shape. And if you don't speak English, why are you even listening to this course? But it probably is related to the sound of the shapes in each language. For example, circle in English is a circle, it's a round shape. So be careful with the shape you're using in each of your designs. If it's a flat one, if it's a sharp one, if it's a round one. In the next class, we are going to talk about, in my opinion, the most important thing in visual communication: contrast. In this class, we are going to talk about contrast. Now I'm going to repeat here something very important. Knowing how to use the software is not going to make you a great designer. One of the most common mistakes that I see designers doing is hierarchy and contrast mistakes. I don't know why, but for some strange reason, many people think that filling the design as much as they can until there is no space at all in your design, it's going to make it better. But actually, this is what makes you look amateur. Contrast is the most important thing if you ever want your designs to look professional. Every piece of graphic design may be interpreted as a combination of different blocks with different kinds of information. Many times it is text information, illustrations, or other things that you may need to put in your designs. But think in every single element as a block. And each one of these blocks has its own way. Some of them must be heavier and some of them must be lighter. And you have to choose which one is heavier than other, because this is the way we get our audience to look to where we want them to look at. One of the main things that you have to do as a graphic designer is to guide the eye of your audience throughout all your design. And the best way to do it is to use contrast correctly. You can either guide your audience through the size of each element or by the color of each element, because color will also guide your audience. And what is contrast? Contrast is a clear difference between two elements. It may be by color, by size, by shape, and you must know how to manipulate contrast. So practice a little bit, and I'll show you in the next video about hierarchy, how to manipulate contrast to get a better hierarchy. Okay, so in this class we are going to talk about hierarchy and how important it is to make your design pop and to guide the eye of your audience throughout the pieces of design that you create. Okay, so we are going to head on the computer now because I want to show you something. Here I have the two characteristics of hierarchy that makes your design pop and shows you how to guide the eye of your audience throughout your design, okay? The first one being position, because in most countries of the world we read from left to right and to top to bottom. So everything that is here on the left upper side of your design will be read first, then what is here, because it is naturally considered the next thing, because we read everything from left to right and to top from top to bottom. Okay, so the second thing is contrast, and you have three ways to get your hierarchy correct by contrast, because you can use contrast in the pure meaning of contrast is the clear difference between two elements. Here we have a black background that's dragging our eye to this area here, and then we have a clear white contrast here. Just a curiosity, besides white is the lighter color that exists, and black is the darker color. If you use black with yellow, for some reason the contrast is higher than with white. Okay, so there are three ways to use contrast to improve your hierarchy. First one is just contrast, clearly contrast. We can use color, because if everything is black and white and suddenly something red pops out, you're probably going to look to this part before everything else. And here this page is not a good example because everything is screaming for attention here. So don't consider this situation, but the next one that I'm going to show you. And then the third way to improve your hierarchy through contrast is by using size. The bigger the faster we are going to look there. So if you really want something to be the top of your hierarchy, you just make a big thing red on the beginning, and you're probably going to pop the eye directly to there. Okay, this is just an example. And here I made an exercise where I use this image. In this situation, the image is the first thing that you are looking at, and then you are looking to this headline, this title, and then you're going to look to the body of the text. Okay, here I used the three leveled hierarchy. Okay, you first look here to the image because of two things: because of the size and because it has a body figure, and our brains tend to look directly to the body figure because your brain understands it as a person, and you tend to look to a person first, then letters or other things. Then you are looking here to this text, to the title, because in this title the letter is bolder, and it has twice the size of the text body. Okay, this is a good rule. Every time that you want to have a clear difference between two texts, for example a title and a text body, you should use at least 2 weights higher. So here we have a regular weight, and here we have a bold weight. So this is probably going to be the second thing that you look on this composition, okay, because of the size. And then this one is tiny, is thinner, so it's the last thing that you are looking. And also it's on the end of the page, it's on the bottom part of the page. So this is going to be the last important thing. I wanted it to look as the less important thing on this page. In this example here, I sorted it in a different way. Okay, so in this situation, just because we increase the size of the headline and then we put the headline in the text on the top of the page instead of the ending, right, like was in the previous page, so this will probably be read in a different order, in a different sort. Okay, first we are going to read the title, then we are probably going to look to the image, because the main part of the image that's not covered by text is here, and it's huge, it's even bigger than this one. So we are going to look second to here, and third we are going to look to here. If we wanted to make the audience read this image in the last place, we should probably going to make it smaller like this and paint it black. And because of the order and the size of things, your audience should probably read this first, this second, and this would be the last thing that your audience would probably look at. Understanding how hierarchy works is one of the best skills that you can have as a graphic designer, because it not only guides the eye of your audience, but it also makes every design piece that you make pleasing to the eye, so it's comfortable to look at. And as I said earlier, one of the basic concepts of graphic design is that aesthetics comes after the functionality. But I didn't say that aesthetics is not important at all. It is important, but it follows function. Okay, so here yet again, this one is not as beautiful, but it's opinion, it's relative. So here in this situation, I like this layout the most. Okay, I prefer this than the last one, but it only works as a good design if this is the right sort that our client and the job wanted us to make. Okay, so this is it for hierarchy. You have to learn how to use it. This is the most important thing in graphic design: hierarchy and contrast. And it's much more important than learning how to use Photoshop and Illustrator, because if you don't know how to use Illustrator, Photoshop, or CorelDRAW, or any software, you can still be doing hierarchy, and you still can be doing good design with analogic tools and with other things besides computers. The first thing that you should learn how to use are hierarchy and contrast. Those are the most important and value things that you must learn as a graphic designer. In the next class, we are going to talk about balancing, and it is the last thing that I'm going to teach you before I give you the exercise, okay? Thank you and see you in the next class. Welcome to the last class of this course, and in this class we are going to talk about balancing. Balancing is one of the most important features that you must have as a graphic designer, and you should master it definitely, because you are going to finish your work. Mainly when you are just a beginner, you are going to finish the work and you are going to notice that something is off and you don't know what it is. Normally it is the balancing. There are two different approaches from graphic design, okay? And you can choose only to use one or only choose the other, or to use both. Is up to you. No one's going to blame you if you only use one of them. There are symmetric designs and asymmetric designs. Symmetric layout is when the weight of the design is distributed equally on the artboard, okay? So the weight on the left is the same weight of the right. This one is also symmetric because this part has the same weight as this part. You still have a part with bold text here and with light text here. You still have image on this side and you still have image on this side. So this is a symmetrical layout. So is this one. If I wanted to convert this to an asymmetrical layout, I would have to do something like this. But in this case, my letters will be too light and it's going to be hard to read. So I would do something like this. And probably, I don't know, but like this, and I would pull this woman a little bit to the left. So this way I have a balanced but asymmetric design, okay? Because the weight here and here on the left and the right are completely different, but still you find this design very comfortable to look at. When you're trying to make a symmetric layout, you should always try to make your elements of the left be the same weight as the elements on the right side of your layout, because when you are using a symmetric layout, when you distribute everything correctly, everything will feel right to the eye, will be pleasing to look at. One of the advantages of symmetrical layouts is that you can put it to proof. You can create blocks that simulates the weight of each part of your layout, and you can see if the weight is well distributed. It's a little bit more direct, and it's a little bit easier to check if the balancing is correct. If you are trying to use an asymmetrical layout, it's a little bit harder because it tends to feel more organic. It has an organic feel. The biggest problem with asymmetrical is that it's harder for you to balance it correctly, because you have to trust your eyes. You have to see and you have to feel if it's balanced. One of the most important, and almost every designer at some point discovered that he should use it more, is white space. White space is very, very important, either in symmetrical, asymmetrical, or anything in graphic design. Not only in graphic design, but on any kind of visual communication, photography, videos, illustration. White space is one of the most important things that you have to know as a graphic designer. And that's definitely something that's going to set you apart from amateurs. The easiest way to see if the designer who's doing the design is actually an amateur is when you look to the piece that he made and you definitely see that white space is missing. Everything needs space to breathe, to be seen. When you need to draw attention to something, you must have white space around it so you can know where to look at. And remember that white space, it's not literally white space. It can be a space with a pattern with no relevant information. That's just a space there. So here in this layout, we have this photograph that has two elements. That's the waterfall and the girl here. And everything else, like these mountains, this piece here where the water is, here and here too, are considered white space. White space helps your eye to know what you are supposed to look at. So this is white space, this is white space, so you know that you are supposed to look at the girl or the waterfall. In here, I have this amount of white space here, here, and here. Let me show you how it would look if I had no white space at all. In this comparison, it is very clear that the right one is much more polished, is much more like a finished piece than the left one. The left one is much more like an amateur would make. Okay, I may have exaggerated a little bit here. When you look to these two images, you can clearly see that this one is more balanced than this just because of white space. The information is distributed in the same way. The position of all elements in these two are the same, but the size is different. And because you have much more white space here, it allows your design to look more professional and to breathe a little bit more. This is very important, and this is a game changer. When you learn how to use white spaces properly, you're definitely going to feel your designs are much more professional. And this is it for this class. In the next video, we are going to talk about that exercise that I was going to send you, and we are going to create the stylescape. Okay, so for the last video of this course, we are going to create our own stylescape. And the example that we are going to use for this class is we are going to create a stylescape to a new brand of barbershop products that wants to look to a gentleman class. Feel free to do your own research, to use the images that you want. In this example, in every stylescape that you are doing, there is no problem at all in using images that you are supposed not to use, like images from Google or images that has copyright. And why is it? Because you are not going to actually use it for your final work, okay? You are just going to use it as an inspiration. So the first step is go right now to Google, to Pinterest, to stock photos, go to the street, take pictures, do whatever you need to get visual references. Once you have all the visual references, you will put everything that you researched, that you took pictures of in a wide artboard. Every time that you are doing a stylescape, I also recommend you to find a person to represent that stylescape, okay? Here is my artboard right now. It has lots of references of other brands, of other stuff that's not even related to barbershop. For example, here I found interesting those beer cans, this thing that I don't even know what it is, those illustrations, those images of cities and things that could be used as a style for this brand. Those are the colors that's going to be used in this stylescape, okay? This brown, this more natural looking, because it's a gentleman. All barbershops normally have that natural vibe of natural products or products from the nature that wants to relate with nature. So that's why I picked these colors, but it's really up to you what the colors you are going to use and the references that you are going to get. And one more thing before we get started, I strongly recommend you to try to do it outside the computer. If you don't feel comfortable with this, it's okay to make it in the computer like I'm going to do. But if you want, you can just take a piece of paper and start cutting paper, cutting magazines references, poster references, everything that you can get, newspaper references. You can also print images that you get on the internet. So it's up to you if you are going to do it on the computer or in paper, but I strongly recommend you for the experience that you are going to get to do it in paper. If you're just starting in graphic design, probably it's going to be hard for you to do it in Illustrator like I am doing, but you can actually do as old designers used to do by cutting, gluing things, and drawing and whatever you need, and you feel that's going to add something to your design, okay? So jumping back to the computer, the first thing that I want to do is to make this artboard here with the same color. the same secondary color that I use for this layout, okay? Then I like to put the James Bond here more or less in the right place. I already pre-cutted it on Photoshop, so you wasn't obliged to see all the process of cutting him out of the background. I will let this file in the resource folder, okay, so you can use it if you want to, but again, I extremely recommend you to do your own research and to search for your own references, okay? Now what we are going to do is we are going to place all these elements on the artboard so the client can choose between this and the other possible stylescapes that you are going to present him, okay? And after placing everything here, this is all the information that I got. You'll get something more or less like this. It's a little bit too crowded, but there is no problem because all these parts can be considered texturing, and each one of these individual images has its own white spaces, so there's no problem to be so crowded, okay? It's a compilation of many references that we are using to get our final product or our final design, okay? I'm going to show here to you, okay? So in this part, I just put the packaging that I was using as reference, okay? And then not really centered, but centered with the part of the images. I put the guy, I put James Bond, so he's the kind of gentleman that's going to use this brand, okay? And here I use the references of packaging, and in this part I put the references of the style of the person, a wild person, a person that's a gentleman that likes cars and motorcycles and to travel through cities. Here I made some experimentations with combinations of fonts and typefaces. And in this part, I made an experiment with possible graphical elements that can add a uniqueness to the brand, okay? And this is it for this course, okay? I really hope that I received some of your stylescapes. I really would love to see the result of everything that I teach you throughout this course. Thank you for being with me. My name is Lucas, and see you in the next course. Thank you.